All right, now it's time for our next panel. I've asked Gartner to come today. I've just been so impressed with. I've known them for years, back from my M&M Mars days and up through, and to watch how they've continued to evolve as a business, and to really start, taking hold of not only like these independent analysis, but some consulting services, et cetera. And I had a great conversations with Martin Kine and Jake Sarofman, both analysts there, and I've asked them to come here, and I said, we need a debate. You guys are the independent experts. We need a debate. Big data versus big content. So with that, I'd like to have Martin and Jake come up to the stage, please. Thank you very much, gentlemen. It's all yours.
All right.
No kicking, no gouging.
Hello, CMOs. How are you? So I'm Marty Kine. This is my colleague Jake Sarofman. I actually, in a previous life, I worked at MTV, and there was a show on MTV called Celebrity Deathmatch. Do you remember that one? With the little, the claymation, that was it. And it would be like the Spice Girls versus Hanson. And so it's going to be kind of like that. We're having big data versus big content. Jake actually isn't wearing his glasses. Usually he wears glasses and I don't. But I was going to say, just because he's wearing glasses doesn't mean he's more intelligent. But it doesn't really work, does it? Okay. So anyway, let me start off. And by the way, the previous panel, I was very happy to hear some phrases dear to my heart. SQL for the first time. Dashboard came up. Query and KPI. Thank you for that. I enjoyed that. I'm the data guy. All right, so let me, I didn't actually vet this with Jake, but I want to do this quickly. So I have 5 facts here. 5 facts. One of them is not true. Okay? So it's false. So this would be like 4 truths and a lie. And what you have to do is tell me which one is not true. Okay? Number 1, more data was generated in the past 18 months than in the entire previous history of the human race. Okay, we think it's true. The average U.S. corporation with more than 10,000 employees, sits on more data than the entire Library of Congress. 230 terabytes. True-ish? Yeah? Okay. Number 3, the average person in the U.S. interacts with 4 marketing addressable devices per day. True? Okay. The average person in the U.S. spends 2.5 hours every day staring at their phone. Do you know what they're doing? The Flurry did this study. 50% of the time is spent doing 2 things: Facebook and games. These are not value-add activities, people. All right, number 5, the last one. The phrase big data was searched more frequently on Google than the phrase Jay-Z. That was false. You're right, but Gartner predicts by 2017, big data will overtake Jay-Z. All right.
Hard-hitting stuff, guys.
So we're going to hand off. Big content will start, and I wish him luck.
Thank you, Marty.
Yeah.
So it's great to be here today. I'm actually an ex-CMO. I've been with Gartner for about a year, and focusing on a couple of different disciplines, most notably content marketing. So content marketing is really the art of storytelling, of brand storytelling, of sort of withholding the commercial pitch and finding ways to engage your audience on the basis of sort of an issues agenda, developing a strong point of view, a lot of the things that we've talked about today. So we're going to go through the process of sort of speaking to the head and the heart of marketing, the art and the science. So, quick show of hands. Who among us, tell me about your attention span. Has it grown over the last 10 years or so? Probably not, right? So this is the burden that we have as marketers, is rising above the fact that that consumers are inundated by pleas for their attention, right? So as marketers, we have to find ways to be interesting, to be engaging. I love this quote. So legendary ad man, Bill Bernbach, you can say the right thing about a product and no one will listen. You got to say it in such a way that people will feel it in their gut, because if they don't feel it, nothing's going to happen. So the question becomes, How do you make people care? Because today, your competition isn't your competition in terms of seizing audience attention span. It's your best friend's new baby. It's cute puppies. These are the things that are the basis for social sharing and engagement on the web today. Right? So how do you rise above the noise? The first point is you have to think like a journalist. It's not about you. Right? As a brand, it's about your audience. So it's finding ways to really think about what they care about and advocate for the issues that they care about. Secondly, it's not just a one-way monologue. It's about engaging in the moment and finding ways to create two-way dialogues. Creating wildly like an artist, taking some risk and seeking to delight, being unexpected. And then finally, developing the daily discipline to do it every single day. Right? And this is the hardest part. So when we talk to clients, they have a social listening post, they have a budget and an appetite for social marketing and content marketing, and then they realize that they lack the supply chain. They lack the process of creating and curating and cultivating content to tell their stories. Marty?
Well, that was a nice try, Jake. Okay. An opening salvo. So, I've been taking notes throughout the day, and there have been some quotes around data that I'm going to just play back from some of our friends here. Bob Bram, the CGI guy, CMO, said about big data, quote, "Even a turkey can fly in that storm." I like that one, because I guess I'm turkey. It's a good quote, right? Miko Shapira from the Wall Street Journal said, "Our best customers at the Wall Street Journal are the ones that use the most devices and the ones about whom we have the most information." I thought that was interesting. So I didn't know if it's because they had the most information, they're the best customers, or the best customers, they have the most information. It's a virtuous circle. Then the YouTube woman, Daniel Teat, just said, "Everyone has data, not just marketing, and we're just trying to control the beast." And I think we all know that feeling. Paul Stanley, "The secret to success is you've got to give people what they need." And then finally, Aspen Crawford, 13 years old, said, "You're going to need somebody." It seemed appropriate. There was actually an Adobe study. They had Ann Lunas out as one of the nominees for the CMO award. She is the Adobe CMO, and they released a study a couple weeks ago. It's worth looking up. And one of the stats in that study, they interviewed digital marketers, and it was really quite overwhelming. A message came out of this. About 68%, something like that, said that they felt digital marketing had changed more in the last 2 years than it had in its entire history. The second point was that 51% of us feel like we are unprepared, that we don't know enough about our discipline. So I think there's a lot of anxiety in the space, and I think that it's okay to admit it. So this is a safe space. If you feel like you don't feel comfortable in the world of big data, it's okay. There's a guide. It's opening. That's the world. So how do you structure data? I'm going to talk about what is data, and I'm going to talk about what to do with it. So there are different types of data. There are 6 dimensions that we have. There's behavioral and attitudinal. Behavioral is what I do. Attitudinal is more kind of what I think and feel. There's persistent and ephemeral. Persistent data would be something that's more demographic. I will probably always be a male. That's a persistent data point. Ephemeral, California, I don't know. Ephemeral data, that would be more session-based, what's going on right now. Most data that we have in the digital marketing world is ephemeral. Personal and anonymous. Personal data would be first-person data, CRM data, things that you might know as a credit card company about transactions. And anonymous, the vast majority of data that we deal with is anonymous. That's shifting, and I'll get to that in a second. And of course, there are tons of vendors coming out. The big ones are on the top. One of them won a big yacht race, you may know, last week. But these big guys are trying to create something called the Data Hub. There's also point solutions, some of which are excellent. I'm not really advocating anyone, but in the attribution world, if any of you are getting into that, Visual IQ, Adometry, Clear Sailing was purchased by eBay. I mean, to give you an example, I used to work at agencies. What you used to have to do attribution, does anyone remember this? What you had to do? You had to ask, double-click, to save your customer level data. Because there was so much data, they threw it out every month. You had to get them to save it. You had to get them to send it on an optical disk, terabytes of data, and get a statistician to do SAS codes, SAS queries, and then actually debate with another statistician, because it's very hard to do attribution right. Then they would come back and tell you, well, yes, actually, these display units had more of an impact on the final sale than we thought. That was attribution. If you know how to do it today, addometry makes it look almost too easy, and that could be an issue. Crimson Hexagon, another example, that was started by some guys at MIT who had a lot of medical data, patient records. This is unstructured data, and they thought, why don't we build an algorithm that can look through, this is true big data, look through this and try to find patterns. And now it's being applied to social marketing, and they can find topics that people are talking about. This is about as advanced as math gets. And it's being packaged up to us, and I like the YouTube analogy there. Do we need people writing SQL code? I don't recommend that you go to your 22 to 23-year-olds and teach them SQL. But you could build a front end that kind of takes the coding and puts it in the background. So there's 3 megatrends. This happens in all big innovation sprees: better, faster, cheaper. But for cheaper, I could say more affordable or cost-effective might be a less scary way to put it. But better is more targeted. It's something more targeted. More targeted site experiences, more targeted advertising. We know more about people, and we know more about more people. Faster, that's the whole world of real-time marketing, real-time bidding, programmatic, which is exploding. And it wasn't even possible. I gave an example earlier. Do you know what happens when you visit a publisher site and they have a 300 by 250 spot and they're trying to figure out what to serve? In that millisecond, what happens is the publisher shares what they know about their site, the content, everything they know about you. If they have first-person data, if you've ever logged on there, if you happen to be a customer, they will take that data, they will send it into the ad network, and then on the marketer side, they're the DSPs, these demand-side platforms, that then have a whole bidding war going on. Marketers have put a value on people like you. Then there are third-party players, DMPs, that are feeding in there, data management platforms, that have done lookalike modeling. People like you, based on the first-party data, the behavioral data across sites. They say, this person looks like this kind of person who might be a valuable customer. Then they'll do the bidding war. And then there'll be a winner. Then it'll go to the ad server. The ad server will call up the unit 300 by 250. That will then go to the publisher, be sent to the publisher, and be served. And all of that happened in 0.3 milliseconds. That's the kind of computing power that didn't even exist 3 or 4 years ago. So when we talk about big data, it's speed and it's size. And this kind of execution, as I said, literally wasn't, it was possible, but it happened much more slowly and less efficiently. So we really are in an extremely revolutionary time here. People are always asking what to do. Number one, don't be afraid. That's what Gartner says. Don't be afraid. Dive in. You heard your CMOs here. I don't think they claim to have the answers. Get very personal. Move from aggregate to individual. This is step number one. If you have a homepage that's served up the same way to everybody, you're actually mathematically better off. There may be a statistician here who's going to tell me I'm wrong, but I think this is right. If you serve up 2 versions of that homepage at random than if you just have the same homepage, you're more likely to be relevant to the person if you don't know anything about them. So you can do personalization at a very simple level, but do it. Focus on the now. Automate what you can. There's a social listening tool called Nuvi now that really terrifies me because I used to work at agencies, and I had a job. I was an analyst, and I did reports. There's this button, Build Report. I saw this button, so I hit it. And a report came out that looked much nicer than the reports I used to do and had all the same information, including English sentences, kind of analyzing what had happened. So I thought, that's my old job, gone. And I have a colleague, Andrew Frank, that said 90% of marketing jobs will be replaced by machines in the next 10 years. I think he's being a little alarmist. At least I hope that's true. But there'll still be a need for CMOs. Don't worry. That's true. And then know what you don't know. Attribution only goes so far. I always say that there's no silver bullet. Even if you buy Adobe, or whoever, IBM, Marketing Optimization Suite, they don't solve all the problems. They're not always easy to use. There is no silver bullet. We'll go back to Art.
Back to Art. Thank you, Marty.
Yep.
So all very interesting, but I'd contend that the precision of your aim doesn't matter so much if you don't have something interesting to say. Right, so content is really the grist for the social marketing mill today. Engagement doesn't happen if you don't have interesting content. We all know that. But the reality is that it's more than social, right? There's this iron triangle that's forming around content as the foundation, around social marketing and search marketing and multi-channel engagement. Because search marketing is increasingly, or search algorithms are increasingly tuned into social signals. So our expressed behaviors and preferences on the web through our sharing and through our expressed sentiment is really driving organic search ranking. So in a sense, where we've traditionally focused on optimizing on-page content for machines, we now have to optimize content for human beings. Because that's producing great content is what drives organic search results. And then finally, multi-channel engagement, the ability to coordinate and orchestrate across paid, earned, and owned channels, online and offline, deliver the right message to the right audience at the right time, is not just about promotions and offers. In fact, that's often a race to the bottom. It's about value-added content. It's about rich content experiences. So how do you become a content marketer? I like to think of it as a supply chain using this manufacturing analogy. So you start with sourcing, and creation is about collaborative creation of content assets across internal teams and with agencies and freelancers. Curation is using natural language search capabilities to identify and organize and annotate third-party content that you can use as the basis for advancing your storyline. And it can be a much more leveraged activity because the process of curation is typically lower effort than original creation. It also matches the social ethos. And then finally, cultivation is about incenting your communities to contribute user-generated content back on your behalf through contests and promotions and gamification. And then the manufacturing process is about organizing in-house teams, and we're actually seeing the rise of this new title, the Chief Content Officer, or editors-in-chief that are responsible for sort of orchestrating how content gets pulled together around brand storytelling. Or with agencies, any number of agencies, digital marketing agencies, sort of next-gen PR agencies that are getting into content marketing as the traditional PR practice sort of collapses and changes. And then finally, content marketing agencies that are sort of organized around content marketing and brand storytelling from the beginning. And then there's this interesting category of sort of skills aggregators, communities that exist for the purpose of bringing together skilled content creators, writers and graphic artists, and movie producers. So Mo Films is a great example of this, using crowdsourcing and using web-based communities to aggregate supply and demand and connect up brands with the folks that can deliver on a variable basis. It's a really interesting and I think fairly disruptive model. And then finally, distribution is how we syndicate all this content to various customer touch points and points of consumption. And there's really three cadences to this. The first is ambient, and that's about sort of the continuous pulse of storytelling in ways that are both large and small. This is the daily delivery of assets and artifacts that reflect your storyline. Responsive is combining social listening programs with social engagement. This is sort of an advanced skill. And then finally, calendar-driven. This is living and dying by the editorial calendar and acting like a publisher in everything you do. So that's the supply chain. It's probably no surprise that our primary research last year around digital marketing spending had content creation and management ranking second only to online advertising of the digital marketing budget. And then we also did some primary research around social marketing, and more than half of respondents said that great content and authentic engagement are critical to social marketing success and really the skills gap that holds back a lot of organizations. And we're seeing outsourcing as often the answer. Marty.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to ask an audience question. Does anyone want to define big data? Anyone? I don't see the hand shooting up. Come on. Just someone. We got one. We got one back there. Is that Pete?
It's like sex in high school. Everybody's talking about it, many people are doing it.
have heard that before. That was Avinash Kaushik, right? Yeah, he said, if you didn't hear, big data is like sex in high school. Everyone's talking about it. Not many people are doing it. Or doing it well, I might add. Vaguely remember. Well, anyway. I'm going to tell you what big data is. You ready? B, better customer models. I, intelligent predictions. G, granular behavior tracking. D, device agnostic. A, accurate attribution. T, timely, and A, actionable. You're welcome. The truth is, I would recommend people stop using that phrase, big data, because it causes more harm than good. Use your power for good and not evil. It's really just what's been done already, given a new label. Plus, there's a statistician element to it, and they would quibble, because actually what big data should be is going to unstructured data with no hypotheses at all, and running simple kind of Hadoop algorithms to determine what might be going on in that data. So it's letting the data speak. Marketers don't really do that. I mean, Clout does it, to figure out influencers. AOL might do it for all of their various thousands of sites. But General Motors, who I used to work for, doesn't do that kind of thing. So anyway, big data doesn't apply to most marketing situations. Although 72% of companies sell or share data with partners, customers, and vendors. This is another study we did. So there's a lot of data sharing going on. This is a trend that isn't going to go anywhere anytime soon. And then we found that we actually divided digital analytics and marketing organizations into different maturity stages. And those who were the most mature, these progressive ones over here, were the ones that shared the most data. The data sharing is going on with their agencies. It's going on with the marketing partners. It's going on with what I mentioned earlier, these data management platforms, DMPs. People like Blue Kai you may have heard of, retargeting data. And then there's also a lot of internal data that's being shared within the organization. This is increasingly happening. CRM data, transaction and customer data. So data, actually most data in an organization doesn't reside in the marketing department. It resides somewhere else. But it can be used for marketing purposes as increasingly people move to the site for their transaction. And that doesn't seem like much of a bang to end on. Let me try to think. Well, let's see what happens.
So how do you assess your content marketing maturity? This is actually pulled from a piece of research that we did around sort of the multiple attributes of marketing maturity. We looked at, I think, 14 or 16 different attributes, one of which was content marketing. The first level of maturity is about documenting capabilities, right? So this is if you've read Simon Sinek, Start with Why, this is the what and the how, right? Not the why. And what you really need to do is you need to hunt through your value propositions and find and exploit your hidden storylines. So what is the why? Why do you do what you do? And what does your brand stand for? Next, you need to organize your storytelling around a narrative arc, right? So humans are wired to be drawn to stories. So tell stories that are creative and, even more importantly, unexpected. Next, develop a differentiated point of view. So what does your brand really stand for? Why do you roll out of bed in the morning? What issues do you advocate for? What issues do you own? Develop an issues agenda. Think about, at the highest level, what does your audience care about, and how can you impact their life in a favorable way? Walk the talk. Become a category creator is really about aligning, synchronizing both your brand innovation and your product innovation. So it's delivering against the promise. And then finally, becoming a thought leader is when audiences seek you out based on your authority and expertise, because you've synchronized not only brand and product leadership, you've also synchronized it with operational execution. So what you say, what you do, and what you deliver are in perfect harmony.
Okay, and I'll do a quick maturity model for data. Just one part of data. It's big, it's big. This is the experience targeting. I'll use Wall Street Journal as an example. She spoke earlier. It was an interesting session. So retargeting is finding people, for instance, they're a publisher. They're a publisher and a marketer. So They offer retargeting placements for people, marketers who buy on Wall Street Journal. They want to advertise on Wall Street Journal. An example would be someone who went to Saks.com and abandoned their cart. They come to Wall Street Journal. They can be served an ad that says something around you abandoned your cart, or would you like to complete your purchase. Lookalike targeting is another thing that they're working on. I don't think it's mature yet, but they have internal data, CRM data, which is information about subscribers, and they're trying to marry that with marketing data that they've been using for placing ads with publishers, and put those together to build out lookalike models, so that is people who look like their best customers, and then go out and serve ads to them. That's lookalike targeting. It's actually quite common today. And then interest graph. This would be an example. She mentioned an alliance with LinkedIn. So LinkedIn knows a lot about people. It's actually a little bit scary how much they know, particularly if you do a lot of commenting. They can read those comments. So they know the attitudinal, the behavioral, and they know a lot of demographic data about us, and then you can marry that in a partnership with Wall Street Journal to create a community around people with like interests. That's just one example of interest gap targeting. Another might be if you go to my Facebook page, you can tell I love the Bernese Mountain Dog. Anyone have a Bernese Mountain Dog? I always ask this. No?
Nope.
Not one? Well, it's California. It's a cold weather breed. Okay. Anyway, if any marketer knew that, they could really use that to their advantage. I mean, if there was a Subaru spot going by and there's a little Bernese Mountain Dog looking out the window, I might just go buy a Subaru. I'm not kidding. And I do think all of us have something like that, something that's very meaningful that marketers can use, but you can only get to it through these indirect channels, like usually social networks. Watching, scaling, learning from social, implicit. So when art meets science, we're going to declare a winner here, and it was me. No. Actually, Jake and I talked, and we realized something. That he wants to talk about content marketing.
Well played, sir. So we talked a little bit about the 3 C's of content marketing: creation, curation, cultivation. There's actually a 4th, and that's context, right? So it's engagement data, it's understanding of your audience persona, it's observed behavioral data, and it's the ongoing history and relationship that you've had with an audience. The ability to merge up, sort of mash up first and third-party data to better understand your audiences, and then sort of align that with your content supply chain, and then throw in automation and orchestration for good measure so you can start to operate at speed and scale. And we have continuous storytelling, right? Continuous engagement and continuous optimization. So what Marty was saying was that we've had this ruse of a debate, but the reality is that we're saying kind of the same thing, right? It isn't big data or big content. It's really the combination of both. And I think the magic happens
Big hug.
when you combine these two things. So we'd be remiss to leave you on that happy note. We're actually going to provide some advice. You know, these are the things you ought to do when you get back to the office on Monday or over the next 30 or 60 days, right? So first, get personal. Think like a journalist. It's not about you. It's about your audience. Act like a publisher. Develop the daily discipline. Create wildly like an artist. Take some risk.
Do some segmentation. I mean, a lot of you do this, but start with first-person data. Look at CRM data. Give them a call. See what they got. And then bolt on third-party profiles through data management platforms and explore that.
Get real time. Engage in the moment or not. It's actually an advanced skill. But certainly publish against the calendar. So having an editorial calendar that sets your themes over a period of time that you use as the basis for driving deadlines and discipline is absolutely critical. And then create a daily drumbeat. You need to get into the practice of actually telling your story every single day in ways that are both large and small. It doesn't have to, it can be curation, right? Curation can be your daily discipline. But do something every day to tell your story.
Most of the site analytics platforms now offer real-time site analytics. That's what's happening literally right now. It's very intriguing and interesting. On-site testing and recommendations. There are a lot of vendors who can help you do that, or you could build your own models. And then explore carefully programmatic media.
Surprise people. Seek to delight. be unexpected, and take some risk.
Along those lines, market to personas and profiles. That's what I mentioned earlier. Don't repeat experiences. So mix it up at random if necessary. And then coordinate channel data to the extent that that becomes more possible in future years.
And perfect yourself. Do it every single day. Hold yourself accountable. Live and die by your deadlines.
Don't wait for the silver bullet. It doesn't exist. Believe me, I've looked. Launch, test, and learn. Constantly be testing, and then use holdouts and controls where you can. Don't take a model's word for it. Actually run simple experiments on your own. And that's our advice. And finally, bring a map.
Has anybody seen the digital marketing transit map?
Digital marketing transit
So
map?
we're trying to simplify the world of digital marketing.
No, it's Tokyo. Yeah, no, we had the best minds at Gartner simplify digital marketing, and
And there you go.
that's what happens.
It's actually fairly simple when you start peeling back the layers. You can hide
Yeah.
the various layers. The tracks represent application domains. The neighborhoods represent technology. And there's something like 110 categories represented. You can start to see the relationships between the various disciplines and technology categories.
And on the site, you can click and unclick the layers. So it actually is quite helpful, but it takes a little moment. And it's
gotta stare at it
complicated.
for a
What
while.
can we say? And then we have 1 minute and 50 seconds, so we have time for one very smart question. Not about big data.
Right here.
Right there.
Hi, thanks. I love both sides of it. A question, actually, a big data side question, even though I'm deeply interested in both. So talk about first-party versus third-party data. What's the value add you get from third-party when you've got rich owned data, first-party data?
Well, the short answer to that is the value that third-party data can give you is that there's no other way to get it than it's third-party. Literally, these are cookie pools. One example is of so I, for instance, go across a lot of sites in my journey across the internet, and it's woven together. A lot of those sites have been pixeled by these cookie pool data management providers, or they have deals with one another, so that even though I go to different sites and I have literally different cookies from those different sites, they're all matched on the back end. So that there's a picture of me in my journey across the internet that's literally me. So all those cookies have been kind of mashed together. And you can't get that from your first-party data. First-party data I'm talking about is like at your bank, for instance, all the transaction data, anonymized or whatever, CRM data, so stuff that you own that can be tied to personally identifiable information. That can be very rich, but it often cannot, and usually actually cannot be tied to marketing behavior. So in other words, I've got to build up a profile of my best customers and then kind of triangulate it out using these lookalike models that I mentioned. But third-party data is data that comes from third parties, so you have to buy it, essentially. Did that help? Yes, no?
And I think we're out of time. Thank you very much.
Yep.